GTR.
Moving forward, we're almost finished with the entire song. We're here in bar 53, and our very first note is this D note, which is on the 15th fret of the B string. Now, if you remember from the last lesson, this first note of bar 53 is actually the last note of the phrase starting from bar 52. So moving forward, we play that D, then we drop down to the D's lower octave, which is on the D string itself, 12th fret. We play the D, then we slide down a half step and we play the C sharp on the 11th fret. We just slide into it as the tab suggests. So we have the D's lower octave, into the C sharp. Now our next grouping of notes, if you look at the score very carefully, you'll see two notes stacked on top of each other. And if you look very carefully once again, you'll notice the lower note hasn't changed. We're still on the C sharp on the 11th fret. And the note on top of it we play is on the B string 14th fret. We play those two notes together. Now if you're saying to yourself, hey, those notes sound pretty much the same, one's just higher in pitch and one's lower in pitch, well, what that means is we're actually playing an octave. If you don't know how to read music, we're actually playing two notes that are both C sharp. The one on the 11th fret D string, that's the lower part of the octave, and the 14th fret B string is the higher C sharp. So I'll go ahead and I'll show you this on the guitar really up close for you. So as you can see, this is the octave shape. Your first finger is on the D string on the 11th fret. Your pinky or fourth finger is on the 14th fret of the B string. So if you look very carefully at the tab once again, by playing these two pair of C sharps, it then tells us to slide down 2 frets. Now we're playing a B octave. We have our first finger on the 9th fret, and we have our fourth finger here on the 12th fret. And I'll show you what it sounds like. So here's our first octave with the C sharps. And we just slide down 2 frets. From C sharp to B. Now I'll go ahead and recap. I'll play bar 53 just up into that point where we slide the octaves from C sharp to B. Now with our first finger still in place on the D string on the 9th fret, we're going to play a B and slide it down a whole step 2 frets to an A note on the 7th fret. Now with our fingers still firmly placed on the 7th fret of the D string, if you look carefully at the score again, we have a cluster of 2 notes again. And once again, we have an octave shape. I'll make it a little nicer for you. There you go. There's your octave shape. Now, if you actually even look more carefully at the score, the last cluster of notes of bar 53 slides into the first pair of notes of bar 54. So what we have is we're sliding our A octave down a whole step 2 frets into our G octave. Now I'm going to go ahead and play bar 53 to the very first cluster of notes, the first octave of bar 54 for you. One more time. Alright, bar 54. As soon as we slide into those octaves from the A to the G, we're now going to move up to G's higher octave, which is on the 15th fret of the high E string, and just come down a half step lower and play the F sharp. Now if you look very closely at the music once again, we're now going to play an octave of an F sharp, and I'll show you how to build this. I'll bring the guitar in real closely once again. This is our next octave shape. Now, what you do is you put your first finger on the A string right on the 9th fret. Then you put your third finger on the 11th fret of the G string. Now the music tells us to slide down 2 frets. We're going to come down a whole step, then we play an octave on the E note. And that sounds like this. I'm going to go ahead and recap bar 54 for you. Now we play the B on the 12th fret of the B string. I prefer to use my third finger because where we're going now is to a different position. Now with our first finger, I'm going to place it on the G string of the 9th fret and play an E, and the music tells us to perform a little trill, which is nothing more than a little hammer-on, and we're going to hammer on to the 11th fret, which is an F sharp. I'll bring that in real close for you. That would be a trill performing it on a whole step. And then what we do is we're going to come up and play this other little small cluster of notes. And what we have here is the bottom note is on the 14th fret of the B string, which is a C sharp, and the higher note is an E note on the 12th fret of the E. And when we play these two notes together real quickly, that is actually what's called an interval, and this is what is called a minor third. C sharp to E is what's called a minor third. And that sounds like this. And then let's just move straight to the first pair of notes of bar 55, which finishes the phrase. Now the music tells us to play the 15th fret of the B string, so I'm just going to take my third finger, slide it up one fret to the 15th, and then we look very carefully again, and on the high E string we now play the 14th fret, so we move up 2 frets. I'll move that in very close again. Now what we have here, this is actually what's called a major third. This is an interval of a major third. The notes are D to F sharp. If you study music, if you have a common basic knowledge of harmony and how to build scales and intervals, this should make sense to you. If not, this is a great place to start learning, and I can teach you that a little bit later down the road. So what happens is, to finish this phrase, you've got this little interval. You have the minor third to the major third, which sounds like this. Now I'll go ahead and recap. I'll play bar 53, we'll start this whole phrase over, into bar 54, and then I'll finish the phrase with the first pair of notes, our first interval of bar 55. Okay, so what happens now is, if you look at the score from bar 55 to the very end, it's an actual repeat of what we just played, and this is how the canon actually creates its ending. Part 1 will finish, part 2 is just a couple measures behind, so it's playing the same part, and the third instrument, the third guitar in this case, is going to be just a few measures behind. They're all going to play the same cadence, which fits in very perfect harmony, and it sounds really cool. So we're going to go ahead and just repeat the same thing towards the very end, starting on the D. D to C sharp. We play the C sharp to B octave, B to A to G octaves, G to F sharp, F sharp to G octaves, the B note, the trill on the E to F sharp. Then we're going to finish once again with those little intervals from the minor third to the major third. And then just we hold the major third interval as long as we can. If you have a certain amount of sustain on your guitar, you can let it just die out naturally. Alright, and that concludes our guitar lesson. Thanks guys for hanging in there for the duration of learning how to play Pachelbel's Canon in D major. Thank you for visiting the sponsors. Thank you for coming up to EasyGuitar.com, joining the newsletter, downloading the guitar lessons, being part of the whole experience, and we'll see you soon.